All right, so we just talked about a big block of songs that were kind of personal awakening moments for us in abstract, like making you feel these conditions. An interesting sort of idea in music that I think we got into as we got older is like songs that actually teach you straight up case facts about stuff. And so the next three songs are like, you need to go Google this type songs. Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday, Into Prison Song by System of a Down. I dare you to find another playlist that has those two things back to back, followed by Reagan by Atlanta's own Killer Mike Rinder. So Strange Fruit. I want to invoke another person that we grew up with, same as Elliot Watts, and he was like our class president, really smart dude, but he was the one who first showed me this song when we were much younger. And the horror of the way that this song kind of flowers and opens up, and you don't realize until a little ways in, when you're already locked in, what she's singing about. Mm-hmm. Blood on the leaves and blood at the root, and it's like really dark Shyamalan when you realize what the titular fruit is. And I read stories about how like Billie Holiday, because of her sophistication, in assimilation, was allowed to sing in these all white clubs. And imagine the pearl clutching and the horror that went on when this song kind of rolls over you like a fog, and you're like, oh my God.
Do you know how she performed the song though in those settings?
I don't guess so.
Oh, so I didn't even know this, but I read a lot about it, and now I felt like I leveled up just from respect for Billie Holiday. So she would do this song exclusively as an encore to these primarily white audiences. She would ask
Hope you had fun tonight.
Oh. She got the servers to stop serving during the song, to turn all the lights off, only a spotlight on her face. When she was done with the song, she would turn the spotlight off. When the lights came back on, she was gone from the stage. And that was how all of her shows ended, where she started doing that as the last. That was absolutely your last moment with Billie Holiday every night. And she did it for 20 years until her death in her mid-40s, which arguably was also caused by the government. Worth looking into that as well. But I mean, she knew what she was doing. And I mean, it's been called a declaration of war in the beginning of the civil rights movement. Like, this was real, unavoidably real and direct. And I think it's worth a couple of points of history around it as well. This was written by a Jewish communist teacher and civil rights activist named Abel Mirapool. And he was inspired to do so because he saw a 1930 photograph that captured the lynching of two black men in Indiana. And I think it's worth sitting just for a small moment on that mental picture, which is one that I personally have hoped that I could emotionally avoid, because it's such a dark and obviously horrendous part of our history. And I think something that helped me shift recently, flooding psychologically is not always the right move for everybody. In this case, it was for me. In this case,
did you A Clockwork Orange yourself?
I learned about lynching postcards, which was enough for me to really understand what I needed to understand about this. I would encourage other people to look into it too, if that doesn't.
Have fun Googling that, America.
Yeah, but the point of it
Clear
is
your weekend.
The point of it is not to just feel overwhelming, immediate shame necessarily, but to understand that, yes, there are always nuances and huge changes in society, like allowing Black people to assimilate into culture and society and support them. Those things are both at once difficult and were done terribly. But it's easy, I think, when you want to defend all the nuances of, you couldn't just end slavery by fiat and have everyone magically assimilate into society. Okay, those things are true, okay? But there is a layer that you can't ignore where for nearly 100 years, white people specifically, at least a subsection of them, took joy in the killing of other people.
In terrorism. Yeah.
For the purposes of scaring other people to never do anything or bother anybody. And that's real. And so I felt it was important to say this because I don't feel like this song can get in your bones unless you understand this was reality. This is not a theatrical performance of what reality could have been like for some people. This was directly written as a result of a real photograph of a real experience that really happened. And so everything
Truly,
terrible.
truth was stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
Or more brutal than anything anyone could have written. And so I think it has all that space in the song because it is meant to, like, it if you listen to it all the way and you see the pictures in your mind, it will knot your guts up.
Yep.
For real.
And it needs to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so you mentioned all of the ways that white people, Americans are entrepreneurial, if anything. We're great marketers. So we figured out how to innovate black subjugation through the prison industrial complex. It was fun. So fun. Why do people get to profit off of prisons? Why is that? Why do we allow that? Shit. I'm gonna devolve into like old man and like radical leftist Boomhauer. So the next song is Prison Song by System of a Down, and we were kind of joking about them earlier and how, like, I still don't think people or even us really understand musically what they were doing. Like they are so irreplicable, and a lot of that is because of like their musical heritage and just the combination of people who came together to be in that band. But they had this weird bounce on this record that was produced by Rick Rubin and was like, it is insane to me that this record was #1 on Billboard because it's really aggressively radical and forceful in its ideas. It came out like right before 9/11, right? And it became like the unofficial kind of 9/11 protest record. It's forever tagged to that. But just crazy that it was so undeniably good and intense and raw and visceral that it like slipped through the cracks.
Yep.
And somebody was like, well, this will be fun. And it has a kind of a lasting but still underappreciated place in society. It's like a pretty intense anti-everything record. This is the first song on the record.
Yep.
And it's they're trying to build a prison. They're trying to build a prison for you and me to live in. And it like, it's like like an Oompa Loompa a little bit. And then right before the chorus, every time he like sneaks in a fact, like nearly 2 million Americans are incarcerated in the prison system of the U.S., or the percentage of Americans in the prison system has doubled since 1985. And then a refrain in the bridge, like utilizing drugs to pay for secret wars around the world. Drugs are now your global policy. Now you police the globe. You're a kid. And you learn about how like you might do 10 years, we might not, but like you might do 10 years for a dime bag of weed in your pocket, which your parents had. And it was like no big deal. The sheriff just drove you home in the front seat if you were a baby boomer. And now that people are making money off of it, they're going to lock you up for a long time over it. So you inherently know as like a small town kid that that's unfair and stupid. And we grew up in a time where like you could feel policing getting more aggressive. And that was us.
Yep.
In a nice town, like just kids trying to, never mean no harm. And then you hear a song like this and you feel totally validated, even though we've never had an experience even remotely on this level. And so you're like, yeah, fuck prison and police and all this is corrupt. Burn the whole thing. Like, this is just one of those songs where it winds you all the way up by the end. Anyway, anything to add on System of a Down's prison song?
Nope.
All right, so let's put a finer point on that.
Speaking of winding all the way up.
Put a finer point on that by shining a spotlight on arguably the architect of kind of this whole movement in the early 1980s. So I want to thank local folk hero Michael Render for saying things that I knew about a president that I didn't know why people liked him so much in a way that finally gave me the words in the order that I needed them.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need that with a song, right? You're just like, oh, they said it better than I could ever say it myself. So Killer Mike's Reagan.
And he's so good too at his kind of like commentary on the song itself. You know, when people are asking him, basically, can you like disambiguate how specifically you were talking about Ronald Reagan, the person, versus Ronald Reagan, the concept, Reaganism, you know? And even he says, it's not about Ronald Reagan, the person, so much as it is about Reaganism. He's like, but remind yourself that everyone every day says that they're following in the footsteps of Ronald Reagan, that they're doing Reaganism, Reagan economics. Like, he's like, I don't have to connect these for you. People use him as their mascot for all their ideas. So I might only be talking about the concept, but the concept at this point is bigger than him and came directly from him and is a result of him. So we're going to talk about it, and we can talk about it specifically being focused on a person, and it's still true for like the larger abstraction of it.
Well, you look at where we are right now, and you have a president who is clumsily trying to like feel out the contours of Reaganism in the dark.
Yep. And
the parallels are there, right? And it's shitty that it happens once in a generation like this, almost at this point. But like, Reagan was an actor. He was a reality show president. He was a figurehead for all of these super bad and toxic people behind the scenes who were doing all of these insane criminal things, and they were criminalizing other people's humanity, and they loathed the poor, like, for no reason. And going back to our friend Elliot Watts, he harps on this refrain of like the thing that Reagan fundamentally got the most wrong, or Reaganism got the most wrong, was that government is the problem, right? So this idea of free enterprise and breaking all of the strictures away, like, a little bit of that arguably needs to be in place so that people don't rape and pillage their fellow human. And so what you have in the song is an indictment of how wrong they got all that in the 80s, especially if you were a black or brown person.
Yep. The problem that government is that rich people can't suck the money if it's in the government. That is where government is the problem. But I mean, this song in and of itself is just like a perfectly good thesis. You could read through it as well as you could listen to it. But it's worth, I think, always revisiting that ideology that came out of that time, because even now we're stuck inside of a hellscape that continues to prop up the idea of like trickle down economics, which in any world where you have a theory, you must also have an actual real life example of the theory working in the way that it's supposed to work. And absolutely objectively, without question, trickle down economics didn't work. And so
it does what the architects want it to do.
Fair enough. In the sense that it does not actually trickle down anything in the economy to anyone else.
It trickles down from billionaires to millionaires.
And I think what's even worse about it is not that, oh no, we accidentally structured our government on an ideology that was actually never provably true. But even worse than that, what I think we miss, or at least I have missed in it, is in order to make that shift, it's important to always see this in government. We made a shift to an ideology based on theory, okay? We said if we give more money to rich people, it will result in non-rich people getting more money, which is absurd on its face already. But let's say you try it, okay? How did we make that shift? We cut all the social programs for the already impoverished people to the point to where objectively poverty went up immediately, because the only way you can do it is to take tax cuts from people who have a lot of money, who we need money from to serve the other people who don't have the same opportunities. And instead we said, actually, what if we didn't take any money from you? You got to keep all the money currently, and then also you kept more of it, and then something, question mark, profit. For poor people, it'll totally work, and everyone will be more happy. And few things like rage induce me the way that whole thing does at this point. The way that, especially nowadays, people will just convince you of an abstract theory, and no one knows how to ask for proof. And these abstract theories have literal, objective, harmful outcomes for people.
Remember, the time when America was so-called great was when we had a 90% marginal tax rate for the highest income bracket. But screw me, right?
What do I know?
Yeah. I think it goes back to...
I just read numbers.
I think it goes back to a part right in the middle of the song. But thanks to Reaganomics, prisons turn to profits because free labor is the cornerstone of U.S. economics. Because slavery was abolished. Unless you are in prison, you think I am bullshitting? Then read the 13th Amendment. And that was before the Ava DuVernay documentary came out. So that was the first time that I actually, 8 whatever years ago, learned about that sort of gotcha clause.
Yep.
Who were the ones we left in charge? Killers, thieves, and lawyers. Thanks, Tom Waits. The line, free labor is the cornerstone of U.S. economics, haunts my dreams, because ultimately everything that we do, like austerity measures and all that, is trying to get back to that, where I need as little expense so that I can make as much revenue as possible and maintain the dynastic wealth of the, 59 billionaires or whatever.
Yep.
In New York, who are keeping the few who are keeping the many homeless and poor and grateful for their servitude. So before we get into this next block, I'll leave you with 4 words. I'm glad Reagan dead.